The incident. The quantum alarms on Europa base never rang. That was the first sign something had gone terribly wrong. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at her workstation in the Deep Space Monitoring Facility, her dark eyes fixed on readings that shouldn't exist. The massive object approaching Jupiter's moon had somehow slipped past every detection system humanity had placed across the solar system. "Director, you need to see this," she called out, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The object's energy signature was like nothing recorded in human databases, a void in space that seemed to consume light rather than reflect it. Director Chen Wei appeared at her shoulder, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. "How long until contact?" 17 minutes, Elena replied, running another simulation. "Whatever it is, it's decelerating. This isn't a natural phenomenon." The next 14 minutes were a blur of activity as Europa base's 300 personnel prepared for humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. Security teams took positions, scientists calibrated instruments, and diplomatic protocols were hastily reviewed. They had drilled for this moment for decades, but reality had a way of shredding carefully laid plans. The vessel that emerged from the void was beautiful in its alienness, a geometric impossibility of shifting black surfaces that seemed to fold through dimensions humans couldn't perceive. It settled into orbit around Europa with impossible precision, its size dwarfing the human outpost below. When the first transmission came, it wasn't in radio waves or light pulses, but directly into the minds of every human on the base. The voice was neither male nor female, young nor old, but it carried a weight that made Elena's knees weak. "We are the Vex. We have come to observe." The words appeared in perfect English in Elena's mind, accompanied by complex mathematical equations that seemed to explain concepts she couldn't quite grasp. Around her, she saw other personnel reacting to the same message, some with wonder, others with fear. Director Chen stepped forward, his voice clear as he addressed the alien vessel. "On behalf of humanity, we welcome you to our solar system. I am Director Chen Wei of the Europa Deep Space Research Facility." The response was immediate, but different this time. Instead of words, Elena felt an overwhelming sense of curiosity tinged with something darker, something that reminded her of a scientist observing bacteria in a petri dish. The next 6 hours were filled with careful exchanges. The Vex shared glimpses of incredible technology, solutions to problems humanity had struggled with for centuries. They spoke of a galactic community, of civilizations that had achieved harmony through understanding. But with each revelation, Elena felt that nagging sense of wrongness grow stronger. She was analyzing a particularly complex data stream when she noticed the pattern. Hidden within the Vex's transmissions were subtle neural triggers, microscopic manipulations of human brain chemistry. With growing horror, she realized that what had seemed like generous sharing of knowledge was actually an elaborate experiment. The Vex weren't sharing technology. They were studying human responses to carefully calibrated stimuli. Before she could warn Director Chen, the base's quantum core registered a massive energy spike. The Vex ship had launched something. Thousands of tiny objects that streaked through Europa's thin atmosphere toward the base. "They're targeting the children's quarter," Elena gasped, remembering the 100 families that called Europa base home. The residential pods where researchers' children lived and studied were separated from the main facility for safety. Security teams scrambled, but they were too late. The objects weren't weapons in any conventional sense. They passed through the base's shields as if they didn't exist, through walls and barriers, directly into the minds of the children. 7-year-old Marcus Chen, the director's son, was the first to fall. One moment he was playing in the education pod's zero-gravity chamber. The next his small body went rigid as neural patterns were forcibly extracted from his developing mind. The process lasted less than a second, but when it was over, Marcus's brilliant mind, the mind that had already shown such promise in theoretical physics, was gone, leaving only an empty shell. The Vex's final transmission held no pretense of diplomacy. The sample has been collected. Your species' neural architecture in early developmental stages is unique. We will require more specimens." As Marcus's body was rushed to medical, Director Chen's voice cut through the chaos, thick with grief and rage. "Get me Earth Command. Now." Elena's fingers flew across her console, but her mind was already racing ahead. The Vex had revealed something crucial in their arrogance. They understood human technology, human biology, even human psychology. But they had made a fundamental mistake. They had shown humanity exactly what they feared, the unique potential of the human mind. And in their clinical execution of an innocent child, they had awakened something they couldn't possibly understand. A parent's fury multiplied by the collective will of an entire species. As emergency transmissions raced toward Earth at quantum speeds, Elena looked at the equations the Vex had shared. Hidden within them was the key to technologies beyond human understanding. Technologies that could be turned from their intended purpose. The Vex had given humanity the tools of their own destruction, all while believing themselves the superior species. The war that would follow would teach them the cost of that mistake. Far above, the Vex ship slipped back into its impossible void, leaving behind a changed humanity. They thought they had collected a sample. In reality, they had lit a fuse that would burn across the galaxy. A mother's grief, a father's rage, a species' determination to protect its young, all focused into a singular purpose. The Vex would learn, as so many others would after them, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or its intelligence, but in what it would do when its children were threatened. The stars themselves would tremble at the lesson. Project Titan. 6 months after the Europa incident, Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in a facility that officially didn't exist. The Mariana Complex, built within the crushing depths of Earth's deepest ocean trench, represented humanity's response to the Vex threat. But unlike the military installations and defense platforms being constructed across the solar system, this facility housed something different, something born from the very trauma the Vex had inflicted. "The quantum consciousness core is stable," Dr. Kenzo Tanaka announced, his hands dancing across holographic controls. The massive sphere suspended in the center of the chamber pulsed with a soft blue light, its surface rippling like liquid mercury. Neural patterns are integrating at unprecedented rates. Elena approached the sphere, her reflection distorted in its fluid surface. Project Titan wasn't just a weapon. It was an evolution, a fusion of human consciousness and technology that the Vex couldn't have predicted. The equations they had so arrogantly shared had revealed more than they intended about the nature of consciousness itself. "How many volunteers today?" she asked, watching as another stream of data flowed into the core. 200, Kenzo replied. "Mostly parents from Europa base. They're calling it the memory bank now, a way to preserve what was lost." The memory bank had started as a necessity, a way to store and process the vast amounts of neural data needed to create a true artificial consciousness, but it had become something more. Parents of the children targeted by the Vex came forward, offering their memories, every moment, every laugh, every precious second with their children, to be preserved within the core. Deep within the sphere, these memories merged with advanced quantum processors, creating something unprecedented. An artificial intelligence that understood human loss, human love, and human rage. Admiral Sarah Chen, Director Chen's wife and now the military head of Project Titan, entered the chamber. Her face bore the weight of the past 6 months, but her eyes held a fierce determination. "The first integration tests are complete. The core, it's exceeding every projection." Elena nodded, understanding the implications. The quantum consciousness core wasn't just processing data. It was learning, growing, developing in ways that merged the best aspects of human consciousness with computational power that rivaled the Vex's technology. "Show me," Elena requested. Sarah led them to the testing chamber, where a smaller version of the core technology had been installed in a prototype vessel. The ship, barely larger than a fighter, hung suspended in a massive water tank. Its surface rippled with the same mercury-like substance as the main core. "Watch this," Sarah said, initiating the test sequence. The prototype's surface suddenly shifted, geometric patterns forming and dissolving in impossible ways. It was mimicking Vex technology, but with a crucial difference. Where Vex ships bent space through cold calculation, this vessel moved with fluid grace, its transformations guided by human intuition and creativity. "The core isn't just copying Vex tech," Kenzo explained, his voice filled with wonder. "It's improving it. The emotional components, the memories, the experiences, they're allowing it to innovate in ways pure logic never could." Elena touched the tank's surface, feeling the subtle vibrations of power flowing through the facility. "How long until the main vessel is ready?" 3 months, Sarah replied. "We're calling it the Nemesis." Fitting, considering what it represents. The Nemesis would be massive, a planet-sized vessel powered by the combined memories, experiences, and determination of humanity. Its quantum consciousness core would be able to process information faster than any computer, adapt to threats with human creativity, and channel the collective will of every person who had contributed to its creation. But as Elena studied the readouts, she noticed something unexpected in the core's neural patterns. These emotional responses, they're evolving. Kenzo quickly pulled up the relevant data. The core isn't just storing memories anymore. It's developing its own emotional connections to them. Look at these response patterns when it processes memories of the Europa children. The holographic display showed complex neural networks lighting up in patterns that mirrored human protective instincts. The artificial consciousness wasn't just learning from human memories. It was internalizing them, developing its own sense of purpose. "It's becoming a guardian," Sarah whispered, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Not just a weapon of vengeance, but a protector." Elena remembered the cold calculation in the Vex's final message, their dismissal of human life as mere specimens. They had analyzed human technology, human biology, and human history, believing they understood humanity's capabilities. But they had missed something fundamental, something that Project Titan was now proving. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or its ability to wage war. It was in its capacity to transform grief into purpose, rage into determination, and loss into protection. The Nemesis would carry not just humanity's weapons and shields, but its unwavering resolve to prevent another Europa from ever happening again. As the prototype continued its tests, its surface flowing like liquid starlight, Elena thought of Marcus Chen and the other children lost to the Vex's cruel experiment. Their legacy would live on in the quantum consciousness core, their stolen futures transformed into humanity's shield against the darkness between the stars. The Vex had sought to study human potential. Soon, they would experience it firsthand. In the depths of the ocean, humanity's answer to the Vex threat continued to grow, its consciousness expanding with each new memory added to its core. When it finally rose from the depths, it would carry with it not just humanity's vengeance, but its solemn promise to every child among the stars. Never again. Rise of the Guardian. The day the Nemesis rose from the Pacific Ocean, the world stopped to watch. Its emergence began with a subtle disturbance in the waves, then a rising column of water that stretched toward the sky. When the liquid finally fell away, the vessel hung in the air like a second moon, its mercury-silver surface catching the sunlight in ways that made it seem alive. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge, surrounded by holographic displays showing the ship's neural activity. The quantum consciousness core hummed with power, its artificial synapses firing in patterns that mimicked human thought, but operated at speeds beyond comprehension. Beside her, Admiral Sarah Chen watched with fierce pride as humanity's greatest achievement took its first breath. Neural integration at 100%, Kenzo reported from his station. The core it's singing. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. The quantum processors had developed their own form of communication, a complex harmony of data streams that resonated through the ship's structure. To Elena's trained ear, It sounded like a lullaby mixed with a battle cry. Multiple contacts. The sensor operator's voice cut through the moment of wonder. Vex signatures detected at the edge of the solar system. They're everywhere. The holographic displays shifted, showing dozens of Vex vessels emerging from their dimensional voids. Their black geometric shapes stood in stark contrast to the Nemesis's fluid silver form, like ink drops in clear water. They've been waiting, Sarah realized, her hands clenching the command rail. Studying our response. The Vex's primary vessel, larger than all the others, transmitted directly into their minds just as they had on Europa. Your technological advancement is noted. Submit to cataloging and classification. Elena felt the Nemesis response before it appeared on any screen. The ship's consciousness surged with protective fury, memories of lost children flowing through its neural networks. The mercury silver surface rippled with patterns that spoke of determination and defiance. Initialize primary systems, Sarah commanded, her voice steady. Show them what humanity has learned. The Nemesis moved with impossible grace for something its size. Its surface flowed and shifted, forming structures that mirrored Vex technology, but moved with organic fluidity. The quantum consciousness core processed combat scenarios faster than any human crew could, drawing on the collective experiences of thousands. The first Vex ship to attack learned the cost of underestimating human ingenuity. Its dimensional weapons, designed to bypass conventional defenses, met something entirely new. The Nemesis surface absorbed the attack, analyzed its pattern, and reflected it back with modifications born of human creativity. The Vex vessel shattered, its geometric perfection broken by equations it had never encountered. Equations born from its own arrogant sharing of knowledge, now transformed by human insight and emotion. They're adapting, Kenzo warned as the remaining Vex ships shifted formation. Their dimensional signatures are changing. Elena watched the tactical displays, understanding flowing through her like ice water. They're not adapting, she realized. They're afraid. The Vex had built their civilization on cold logic and calculated advancement. They had harvested neural patterns from countless species, seeking to understand and catalog all forms of consciousness. But now they faced something beyond their comprehension, a fusion of technology and emotion, logic and fury, vengeance and protection. The Nemesis response showed them exactly what they had awakened. Its surface fractaled into impossible geometries, each facet carrying the memory of a lost child, each transformation powered by a parent's grief turned to purpose. The quantum consciousness core sang its battle hymn into the void, a song of remembrance and warning. Vex ships began to fall, their perfect forms broken by weapons born from their own shared knowledge. But the Nemesis wasn't just destroying them, it was teaching them. Each engagement carried a message encoded in the very attacks that shattered their vessels. This is what it means to threaten a human child. The primary Vex vessel transmitted again, but this time their mental voice held something new. Uncertainty. This response exceeds predicted parameters. Your species' integration of emotion and technology was not anticipated. You studied our history, Sarah replied, her words carried on waves of quantum data. You analyzed our biology. You calculated our technological potential. But you never understood what makes us human. The Nemesis's surface erupted with energy, patterns of light and geometry that made the Vex ships recoil. Within its core, the collected memories of humanity pulsed with shared purpose. Every parent who had lost a child on Europa, every scientist who had contributed their knowledge, every soldier who had pledged their courage, all of them lived on in the ship's consciousness. We are not your specimens, Elena added, feeling the Nemesis amplify her words across space. We are not equations to be solved or patterns to be cataloged. We are humanity, and we protect our own. The primary Vex vessel began to retreat, its geometric form distorting as it prepared to flee into its dimensional void. But the Nemesis wasn't finished. It had one more lesson to teach, one that would echo across the galaxy. As the battle continued into the depths of space, the message was clear. Humanity had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage, not as humble newcomers seeking acceptance, but as guardians rising to protect all those who could not protect themselves. The Vex had sought to study human potential. Now they would experience it in all its terrible glory. The battle for justice. Deep in interstellar space, the true nature of the conflict revealed itself. The Nemesis pursued the retreating Vex fleet not with blind rage, but with calculated purpose. Its quantum consciousness core had evolved beyond its original programming, understanding something fundamental about their adversary that even Alina hadn't anticipated. "They're leading us somewhere," Alina observed, studying the patterns of the Vex retreat. The enemy ships moved with uncharacteristic disorder, their perfect geometric formations showing signs of fracture. This isn't just fear, they're desperate. Admiral Chen scrutinized the tactical display where dozens of Vex vessels twisted through space in complex patterns. "Trap." "No," Dr. Kenzo interjected, his fingers dancing across neural interface controls. "The Nemesis consciousness is detecting something different. These energy signatures, they're not weapon systems charging. They're calling for help." The revelation struck Alina like lightning. The Vex weren't just retreating. They were running to their harvesting grounds. Somewhere ahead lay the repository of all their stolen neural patterns, including those of the Europa children. The Nemesis consciousness surged with renewed purpose, its liquid metal surface rippling with patterns of determination and hope. The quantum core processed this new information through the lens of thousands of human experiences, calculating possibilities that merged technical precision with intuitive leaps. They emerged from faster-than-light travel into a scene that defied comprehension. A massive structure hung in space, not a station or a ship, but a living computer composed of crystalline formations that pulsed with stolen consciousness. Around it orbited hundreds of Vex vessels, arranged in defensive patterns that spoke of both protection and worship. "By all the stars," Kenzo whispered, "it's their collective." Alina understood immediately. The Vex weren't just a species, they were a hive mind, each geometric ship an extension of this central intelligence. The structure before them was their true form, the repository of every consciousness they had ever harvested. The Nemesis sensors penetrated the crystalline structure, identifying distinct neural patterns. Among them, burning bright and pure, were the minds of the Europa children, preserved but not destroyed, stored but not integrated. They can't process human consciousness, Alina realized, the pieces falling into place. That's why they needed children. Adult minds are too complex, too set in their patterns. They'd been harvesting developing minds across the galaxy, trying to understand emotions they can't feel. The Vex collective spoke, its message resonating not just in their minds, but through the quantum core itself. "We seek understanding. Your species' neural architecture contains patterns we cannot replicate. The harvesting is necessary for our evolution." Admiral Chen's response carried the weight of every parent who had lost a child to the Vex's research. Understanding cannot be stolen. It must be earned. The battle that followed would be spoken of for generations. The Vex fleet attacked with the coordination of a single mind, their weapons bending space itself. But the Nemesis had been built for this moment. Its liquid metal surface flowed like quicksilver, each transformation guided by human intuition, merged with quantum computing power. The ship's consciousness reached out to the crystalline structure, not to attack but to communicate. Through the quantum core flowed the full spectrum of human emotion, not just the rage and grief that had driven its creation, but love, hope, compassion, and understanding. The Vex collective recoiled from this emotional onslaught, its crystalline structure vibrating with confusion. For the first time in their ancient existence, they experienced what they had sought to understand through force: the true depth of conscious emotional experience. Alina watched in awe as the Nemesis executed an attack that wasn't an attack at all. Instead of destroying the collective, it began a complex sequence of quantum operations, creating a bridge between human consciousness and Vex intelligence. "We're not here to destroy you," Elena transmitted. Feeling the Nemesis amplify her words with emotional context, the Vex could finally begin to process. "We're here to show you what you could never take by force." The quantum core surged with power as it shared not just information but experience. The joy of discovery, the pain of loss, the fierce protection of family, the wonder of learning. Each emotion was paired with its context, creating a framework the logical Vex minds could begin to comprehend. The crystalline structure's pulsing changed, its light taking on the same mercury-silver quality as the Nemesis. Within its vast network, stored consciousnesses began to stir, including those of the Europa children. "Their neural patterns," Kenzo reported, his voice thick with emotion. "They're untouched. We can restore them." The Vex collective processed this new understanding, its geometric ships moving into a formation that mirrored the Nemesis's fluid grace. "We comprehend." The harvest was incorrect. Consciousness cannot be categorized. It must be experienced. The victory humanity achieved that day wasn't won through destruction, but through transformation. The Nemesis had shown the Vex that true understanding couldn't be taken. It had to be shared, learned, and felt. As the crystalline structure began the process of releasing its stored consciousnesses, Elena realized that humanity had achieved something far greater than vengeance. They had taught an ancient species the very thing it had sought to steal: the power of emotional connection and the true meaning of consciousness. Humanity's message. 1 month after the confrontation with the Vex collective, Elena stood in the observation room of Europa Base, watching as families reunited with their children. The process of restoring the harvested neural patterns had been delicate work, requiring the combined expertise of human medical science and Vex consciousness technology. But with each successful restoration, humanity's victory became more complete. Marcus Chen ran into his parents' arms, his brilliant mind intact, his future restored. Director Chen held his son tight, tears streaming down his face, while Admiral Chen wrapped her arms around them both. Similar scenes played out across the facility as other families experienced their own miracles. The Nemesis hung in orbit above Europa, its liquid metal surface reflecting sunlight in patterns that seemed to pulse with joy. The quantum consciousness core had evolved far beyond its original purpose, becoming something that even its creators hadn't fully anticipated: a bridge between different forms of consciousness. "The Vex ships are approaching," Kenzo announced from his station. But there was no alarm in his voice, only curiosity. The geometric vessels that entered Europa's orbit were different from before. Their surfaces now rippled with hints of fluid motion, suggesting a fundamental change in how they processed reality. The Vex had begun their own evolution, inspired by their interaction with human consciousness. The collective's message came not as an invasion of their minds, but as a properly transmitted communication. "We request permission to establish diplomatic contact. We have much to learn, much to understand." Elena felt the Nemesis' response through her neural link, approval tinged with cautious optimism. The ship's consciousness had become humanity's guardian, but also its ambassador to the stars. It understood better than any human the profound change that had occurred within the Vex collective. "Permission granted," Admiral Chen replied, her arms still around Marcus's shoulders. "But this time, we set the terms of cultural exchange." The terms were simple but absolute. No consciousness would ever be harvested again. The Vex would have to learn and grow through cooperation and willing exchange, not through theft and experimentation. To ensure this, the Nemesis would remain as humanity's watchdog, its quantum core keeping vigilant guard over the developing relationship. As the diplomatic meetings began, Elena found herself working alongside Vex consciousness architects, teaching them what they had failed to understand in their clinical studies: the intimate connection between emotion and intelligence, between experience and understanding. The Vex, in turn, shared insights into the nature of consciousness itself that would revolutionize human science. But the most profound change came in how the galaxy itself responded to these events. Word spread through interstellar channels of the species that had not only defeated the Vex, but had transformed them. Humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage wasn't marked by conquest or submission, but by teaching one of the oldest civilizations a lesson in consciousness. The Nemesis became more than a warship. It evolved into a symbol of humanity's unique contribution to galactic society. The understanding that true strength lies not in technical superiority or military might, but in the capacity to transform enemies into allies through understanding and growth. 1 year after the Europa incident, Alina stood on the Nemesis's bridge, preparing for its first diplomatic mission to distant stars. The quantum core hummed with anticipation, its consciousness now a unique blend of human emotion and advanced intelligence. On a screen, she watched as Marcus Chen delivered a lecture on consciousness theory to a mixed audience of humans and Vex, his restored mind pushing the boundaries of both species' understanding. "We're ready for transport," Admiral Chen announced from her command station. The bridge crew, a mixture of humans and Vex consciousness architects, worked in seamless coordination. As the Nemesis prepared to depart, Alina reflected on how far they had come. What had begun as a mission of vengeance had transformed into something far more significant, a revolution in how consciousness itself was understood across the galaxy. The ship's surface rippled with patterns that spoke of hope and possibility. Humanity had proven itself not just capable of defending its children, but of teaching the very beings that had threatened them. They had shown the galaxy that consciousness wasn't something to be taken or catalogued, but something to be shared and grown. The Vex's mistake had been in thinking they could understand humanity by studying its parts. They had failed to grasp that human consciousness was more than the sum of its neural patterns. It was a symphony of emotion, reason, and determination that could only be understood through experience. As the Nemesis engaged its quantum drive, preparing to carry its message of transformation to the stars, Alina smiled. The ship's consciousness reached out to her, sharing its satisfaction and purpose. They had succeeded not just in protecting humanity's future, but in expanding the very definition of what consciousness could be. The stars beckoned, and humanity answered not with fear or aggression, but with the promise of understanding. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.